Green light? Green light. Yep. Good. All right. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the CharlieB Podcast. My name is Charlene, better known as CharlieB, and I am so glad that you took out the time to join me. Listen up. You need to grab a friend and come on in because we are about to be blessed tonight. I am just beside myself. I'm giddy. I was sweating and nervous because we have the amazing, the beautiful, and the talented. This woman is full of information and she's going to share it with us tonight. I am blessed to have in the studio tonight the wonderful and the beautiful Miss Deborah Price. Say hello to the peoples.
What a pleasure and an honor it is to be on this podcast today. I'm really humbled by the introduction.
This is so awesome.
I'm really humbled, and I hope that what you hear can be a seed in your spirit for whatever the purpose is. But I guess I'm here to talk about the Underground Railroad Museum, our activities, and address whatever questions that you may have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're in June. Today is not actually Juneteenth. And after I spoke to you this morning, this episode, I always pre-record.
Okay.
This episode was going to air on June 19th, but I decided, no. We have to do this a little bit sooner because this Saturday, today is June 11th. This Saturday, the 14th, something amazing is going to take place, and you all need to be there. And Miss Price is going to tell us. You want me to call you Miss Price or Miss Deb? Because I could.
Debbie.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. If it were possible, my mother would turn over in her grave. No, ma'am. So Miss Debbie is going to give us all the information about Juneteenth, about Timbuctoo. When I was a little girl, my mom used to say, "What took you so long? Where'd you go, to Timbuctoo?" And we just thought it was a fake place that my mama and her sister, Aunt Pat, made up. But she would always say, "It took you so long in Timbuctoo this and Timbuctoo that." And I learned that Timbuctoo was actually a place.
In Africa.
Right. And now we have, I don't know how long it's been there, but I'm going to be learning tonight with you all about Timbuctoo and what's coming up for Juneteenth. All right. So how about we start with, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Okay. My name is Debbie Price. I'm the executive director of the Underground Railroad Museum of Burlington County. This is a museum that was initially founded by Louise Calloway in 2005, where she established a museum, formerly cafe, in downtown Burlington City. She was one of a beautiful person.
Yes, she was.
She loved people. She loved education.
Yes.
She loved to allow people to self-express.
Right.
Be it through oratorical situations or through the arts, through whatever mechanism you had. She provided that platform to allow folks to do that. Even in establishing a school in Canada. She also traveled a lot with her husband. Her husband did a lot of work in Africa. And because of their works, he was knighted a king. So a lot of the DNA of this museum is still in Burlington City.
Yes.
However, it was relocated to Smithville in around 2015, 16.
Right.
And under the auspices of the county.
Right.
So
and that's in Mount Holly, right? Smithville is in Mount Holly.
Smithville is in East Hampton.
Okay.
It's in East Hampton. It's at 803 Smithville Road in the historical Smithville Park in Building 10.
Nice.
And that's in East Hampton.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of people don't even realize that it's there.
Right.
Yeah. It's immediately adjacent. Yeah. It's immediately adjacent to the mansion that's there.
Okay.
And we're located in one of the little white homes, but that's where the museum is.
Okay. And you do the tours.
I do the tours. I am the executive director. But we have a team. We have a great team of, I call them my support team because you can never do anything by yourself.
Absolutely.
You cannot do anything by yourself.
No, you
but we
cannot.
have strengths of backgrounds, talents,
Yes.
but we have a common thread, and that's the thread of history and the love of sharing.
Right.
And that's what we're about. When you typically come into the museum,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I stop everyone in the lobby because I give the energy of the museum to the continent of Africa. There are so many curiosities and so many questions about why was Africa or the continent of Africa infiltrated
Right.
by the Europeans
Yes.
and the like. Okay. Before I get into the
I'm ready.
diaspora movement,
Yes.
okay, I prefer to talk about how we are from the kings and queens legacy and lineage. I talk about the
See how I sit
different,
up straight. Let's go.
yeah, I talk about the different cultures, the
Yes.
different ways of communicating, like that, ticking. I talk about the history of things like when people ask you, let's have a moment of silence.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the history of that? That's
No.
tied to the drums. Out of respect, when someone transitions, everybody goes quiet and the drums beat. So folks can know someone has transitioned and they can go home to rest. That is the beating of the drum, which symbolizes or synchronizes with the beating of the heart. Okay. But things like that, that's what we talk about. We talk about the excellence in education. We talk about the richness of the soils. We talk about the legacies of the families, where they came from, whose they belong to. I really enjoy that segment in the lobby.
That's just in the lobby.
That's just in the lobby.
Oh, I can't wait.
That's just in the lobby because it's so important for us to realize and to know whose we belong to.
Wow.
Before the step or the decision was made to infiltrate the continent.
Wow. Okay. So we go to the lobby and we're met by you when we go to the museum. Tell us a little bit more about the experience and where your love. First of all, I would like to know how you know so much about it. Did you go to school for it? I would like to know that history, if you don't mind sharing, because that's going to be interesting.
How I started.
Yes.
How I started. One thing, I grew up in the military.
Okay.
I was a military brat. So growing up literally around the world, you get to appreciate the differences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But in understanding the differences, that gave you a sense of pride of who you were.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And the families and listening to the stories. I was able to listen to different stories, different cultures, different religions.
Yes.
I had a beautiful opportunity of the travel through my mom and dad. We're in the Air Force.
Nice.
But one thing that was really unique that happened when I graduated high school, I went to North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina. Yes, I am an Aggie. Aggie born, Aggie bred, and be an Aggie till I'm Aggie dead. But it's something about going to the HBCUs where you actually learn who you are.
Okay.
And whose you are.
Right.
And most of the HBCUs, you will notice that there's a gate in front of HBCU.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a meaning behind that.
Right.
Because so many people have sacrificed to allow us to go through those gates and to serve on those grounds. And while I was at A&T, there's a lot of history on A&T's campus, and being able to sit there and learn it.
Yes.
I not only learned about the history, but I learned more about me, of who I am as a person. You see, I didn't realize it at the time, but the best thing that my mother did was to drop me off in the parking lot, and I didn't know anybody at all. She said, now it's your turn to learn. I played basketball. I did all of that. The survival skills, you just got to put it into play.
Yes.
You got to put it in motion.
Yes.
But throughout the 4 years that I was at A&T, I represented the school in many facets. For a cheerleader for 4 years, Miss Omega Psi Phi my senior year, my junior year, and then my senior year I was Miss A&T.
Wow.
But the thing that captured me out of all of that is that, sorry,
No.
folks saw things in me that I didn't see within myself.
Right.
You understand?
Yeah.
So when you're representing not only yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but the university,
Right.
as well as the students that believed in you, that I would convey things to them
Mm-hmm.
that I was entrusted with that. You know, and
That's
even till
heavy.
this day,
Yeah.
even till this day, I am so proud to be a former, current, whatever, you know, but even with the cheerleaders, we talk every day, and it's 50 years later.
Wow.
You know, so you never know who's going to be planting seeds in your spirit,
Right.
you know, for whatever the reason is, you know, be it education, be it life,
Mm-hmm.
you know, be it for motivational purposes or just survival purposes. You know, the people that have planted seeds in my life, that's why my email is called Seeds Foundation 1.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Planting seeds to make a difference in someone's life.
Right.
You're going deep in understanding, wide in networking. Once the seed is in fertile ground, because you've been watering the situation for so many years, not until it's time does the seed bud life.
Right.
But once life is bud and born, it goes up to the one that can answer any question that you have, because foundationally you're grounded. You know, so
Whew.
it's
Goodness.
the whole piece about my journey,
Right.
because you asked about my journey.
Yeah.
It has been a journey full of a lot of seeds, a lot of seeds. At the time the seeds were planted, I didn't understand the why. But when I go to the museum, I never knew that a lot of people that planted in my life are on the walls. And I'm speaking about them,
Yeah.
to them, through them.
Right.
You know, I never thought I'd be speaking with a Rosa Parks or Barbara Jordan or Shirley Chisholm or Merle Ebbers, or, I mean, where do I stop? You know, the speaking with Rosa, come on,
I
Coretta
can't even.
Scott King.
I'm just like, ha- these are people that we hear about and read about, and you've
Exactly.
actually.
And even in March, I was led to go down to Selma, Alabama, because I just had to be there. It was the 60th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, and the experience, that experience in itself, okay, I went down by myself, not knowing who to expect, what to meet, who to meet, you know, all of that. And I met the Sarahs of the world. You know, I met Opal Lee. Opal Lee is the young lady that walked from Texas to Washington, D.C., and met with President Biden. And because of her efforts, you know, Juneteenth became a national holiday. But I'm on the phone with her.
Thank you.
And speaking with her. And as a result, her granddaughter, which is her publicist, Deion Sims, she's going to be at our Juneteenth event this Saturday.
Oh my goodness.
But you never know who and why. You know, I never knew that I'd be crossing the Pettus Bridge with Martin Luther King III on my side. I never knew, you know, but I did that in honor of John Lewis, you know, and I purposely stood on that bridge the day before the big walk because I wanted to feel his spirit. There was a reason why I was down there. Was a reason why I was drawn, you know. So I can't, you know, why certain people have been, you know, blessed. The people here in Willingboro.
Yeah.
You know, and we go back years, from our little kids all the way to adults. Even with what's going on at the museum, I can't explain the why. I just trust that, I'm being led to allow certain people to come into my life, enable folks to come into my life, and being patient enough to have the discerning ear to say, okay, you're giving it to me for a reason. It's not for me to keep, it's for me to pass it on.
Jeez.
Okay, so
that's so awesome. If I could just plug in a little bit, because the thing that captured me about you is Dion told me about you, and I reached out, and without hesitation, it was so fast, your response. And I said, this woman doesn't know me, but you were willing.
Sure.
And that was amazing. And just a few moments ago, when I introduced you to my daughter, to baby girl, the way that you stopped everything you were doing and gave her all of your attention. And then what you did is you planted a seed in her.
Yeah.
And she took that. Now it's up to her to water it.
Yeah.
Miss Price said, I'm here if you need me. Do you know how important that is for generations to know that they have somebody? Because you said what's important is about networking. It is really about who you know, right? So just having you here and you sharing your information with whoever is going to come across this podcast is going to be blessed. And it also gets us busy doing what we're supposed to be doing, because we're not supposed to keep it.
Right.
We're supposed to water somebody else and plant the seeds. So what you're giving me is my responsibility to now give it to somebody else. I'm not supposed to hold it.
Right.
Right. And so many times that's what we do. And you are changing the world in so many ways. So I want to get back to the museum.
Sure.
Now, the history of it.
I know we're still in the lobby, right?
Right. Because, and when I go, I'm because I'm not a crier, but once I start crying, it's a whole entire rap. But I need to know, I know your love now, but the history of it. How did we get to East Hampton? You know, we're not supposed to be there.
Let me tell you how we got. No, we're supposed to be where we're at for a reason. Everything happens for a reason.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Basically, when the museum outgrew itself.
Yes.
Okay. We were blessed with the location out in Smithville.
Yes.
Okay. You see, when you come into the museum, I'm gonna take you out of the lobby.
Okay.
I know we're still in the lobby. Okay.
I like the lobby.
But believe it or not, my tours can last up to 2.5 hours, and you won't even realize it's going that long. But when you come out of the lobby, the way the museum is set up by way of centuries. Okay, so when you walk into the first room, it's literally the 1400s. Okay,
wow.
That room alone focuses on the diaspora movement. Okay, the decisions being made to infiltrate the continent of Africa. We talk about that, how those that were led from one point to the other, a lot based on economics,
right?
A lot based on trying to convert and strip those that were coming from their origins,
right?
Stripped, raped, maimed, beaten, slain. You have all of that. How were they placed into these ships? How were they placed in different categories? How did the diaspora movement work? Do you know what I mean by diaspora?
No, ma'am.
Diaspora means it's when you have a group of people that you take them from their original place of origin, and then you disperse them around the world. And our diaspora movement, the African diaspora movement, was in fact the largest. Okay. But what we do in the museum, we not only talk about the movement from the western coast of Africa, because everybody thinks, oh, okay, they're going from Africa to the Americas, and then North America, and then back. The typical transatlantic trade.
Right.
Okay. But what I do, I talk about information that dates all the way back to 3200 BC and to the present.
Wow.
Information that you would normally not see.
Right.
But the diaspora movement, not only to the Americas, but we also talk about the movement to the Asian countries, Grecians to Europeans and the like, because we are global. We're a global nation.
Wow.
Okay, and that's just the first room. That's the first room. But I also hold on to the chains, so you can feel the chains of being pulled from one point to the other. How you were placed in ships, how you were mistreated, how you were raped, how you were maimed. That you came in as virgins, no longer virgins, boys and girls, whatever the need was, whatever the destination was, and placed in these ships, stacked. You were not human at the time. It was human shadow.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I go through all of that, but at the same time, I'll allow you to talk about your family and where's your family from. So that's your time to speak, because this is your story, not just mine to tell.
Right.
And that's just the first room. Okay. Then after the first room, we go into the next room, which is the 1600s and the 1800s. And in that room, I focus on how those that were enslaved were mistreated in the Americas.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I focus on that and the economic impact and the generational impact of how those were mistreated on the plantations. Then I go from who is the most famous? I'm gonna ask you a question. Who is one of the most historical figures in the Underground Railroad that you know about?
That I know about is Harriet Tubman.
Exactly. That's why I don't talk about her.
Oh, okay.
I talk because everybody knows her story.
Right.
But I talk about the collaborations that enabled her to be the best conductor that everyone knows.
Right.
So when I talk about collaboration efforts, I talk about the abolitionists, the Quakers, the indigenous nations, the churches, the communities, the waterways. I talk about the codes. I talk about all of those things that enabled her to be the best at what she was.
She didn't do it alone.
She didn't do it alone.
Right.
And people need to understand it wasn't just us alone.
Right.
I talk about, well, would you rather be in the house or would you rather be in the field?
In the house.
Okay.
Because I don't do heat well.
Okay.
I'd say I probably would have been killed early, though.
Did you see the movie Harriet?
Yes.
Okay. How did she tell her mom she was leaving?
I don't remember. It's been a while. I don't remember.
Okay. In reference to the house versus the field, in the house, you said you don't like heat.
Right.
That's where you get most of the heat, is in the house. Raped, beaten, maimed, and the like. Versus in the field, you had one day off, and that was on Sunday afternoons. Okay. But even though you're working in the field, the typical lifespan of someone working in the field was only 9 years. Day in, day out, season in, season out, production. Because the generational impact of those working in the fields versus the house, you had to work no matter where you were at.
Right.
They were forced to breed because over a period of time, they didn't have enough women coming or slaves coming from Africa, so they had to produce. So they impregnated women of the house, slaves coming in, as well as impregnated those women that were already slaves to produce labor generators to sustain the plantation. Now,
oh my God.
As you come into the museum, you will see the actual branding irons. You will see the shackles, the braces in the neck. You see all of that. Okay. But the one thing that people don't realize is that when you see the story of the Underground Railroad and how it happened, okay, the one thing that you always see on TV, slaves running, right?
Yeah.
But what people don't know is over 70% of the success rate of the Underground Railroad was on the water, was maritime. Exactly. So that's why, when we do our tours and we do presentations and we do things like that, I do tours on the Delaware River. So you can actually see the different stops and you'll understand, oh, this is how it happened. In addition to the running. That's in room number 2.
You just so often I thank the Lord. I just stop. Certain things trigger me to thank the Lord
Mm-hmm.
and say, I'm glad that I thank God for my ancestors going through what they went through so I didn't have to, right? Um, I can't even imagine. You said which one would I be? I would have asked him to kill me now. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do it either. I wouldn't want to be nowhere there. But when you think about what they really went through,
Mm-hmm.
it's painful
Mm-hmm.
to hear. It's painful. And then one of the things that I had a hard time, and my dad, who's been gone, he left passed in '08. I would be like, but why were they allowed to do that? How is it possible? How is it possible that they treated us worse than animals? We weren't even considered human.
I was just going to
Like
say,
how?
you have to, that timing, you were human chattel. You were human chattel. Everything comes down to economics, believe it or not. Okay. You talk about, well, how could they do this? Or how could that frame of mind? But see, what people don't understand is that history is to learn from, not to revisit.
Yeah.
Okay. What's happening in today's world is we're not learning it. So you have nothing to do but revisit it.
Right.
Okay. And a lot of the answers to the challenges that we're going through now
Mm-hmm.
is in our history books.
Yeah.
If we just sit down and listen and listen and listen.
Yeah.
Okay. Because one of the things that I do in room 2, because I know you wanted to know more about Timbuktu. Okay.
Yes.
I talk about Timbuktu. In the museum. So when you actually go and visit Timbuktu, you have an appreciation
Right.
of what you're looking at.
Mm.
Okay. Because Timbuktu was established in 1826.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
Established in 1826. A battle occurred in 1860. The battle happened because you had, there was a slave on the property, and the slave trackers tried to extract that slave from the property. Okay. I want you to remember those 2 years.
Okay.
1826, battle, 1860. Okay. But the one person that I really want to mention when it comes to the history of Timbuktu is Guy Weston. Hands down. The doctor, I call him Dr. Timbuktu.
Dr. Timbuktu.
Yeah, because he's done so much research.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really want to know what happened on that property, whose property it was, the legacy family members, everything about Timbuktu, right off the bat, Guy Weston, hands down.
Wow.
Okay. And sidebar, the legacy family members of Timbuktu, they will be out there on Saturday.
You better be there. I'm going to be there.
They're going to be, and you'll have an opportunity of meeting Guy Weston out there. But that there's so much to be grateful for with Timbuktu, of what it symbolizes, because it was one of the largest freed antebellum communities in New Jersey, was right down the street.
Why don't we know that?
Because we're not being taught. Now, if you were to go there today, you would see about 11 headstones, but there's over 180 souls that are buried in that cemetery. Period. There's a big hill.
Yeah.
There's a big hill back there. Okay. Temple University did an excavation of that property back, I think it was 2015, 16, around there. Okay. And they unearthed a house. The artifacts that were found in the house, they let me use that when I do presentations in corporations, so we can focus on not just how they passed, but how they lived. Okay. But I highly encourage you, when you get an opportunity, have God come and talk. He will.
Yes.
He's phenomenal. He's phenomenal. that can be your part too. Because I know you really want to get into Timbuktu. But okay, I'll just leave it there. But we're still in room 2.
Oh, I thought we
Okay.
moved to 3.
No,
We're
we didn't
still
move
in
it.
2.
We're
Okay,
still in 2.
Okay.
Yeah, because with that, I talk about, the different signs, how you can tell whether there's an Underground Railroad stop. You can't believe everybody because it's an empty room, a dark room. Oh, they must have held slaves there. No, you can't do that. There's a known pattern that you look for. You see, my walking partner and I, he's a walking artist. We walked from Cape May, New Jersey, all the way to Burlington City. That was 154 miles.
Literally?
Yes. And walking that, he's walked from Maryland all the way up to Delaware, as well as, we walked the Cape May to Burlington City. Then he walked from Harlem, New York into Canada, 454 miles.
Oh,
He
my
just finished.
goodness.
Yes, he just finished walking from Texas into Mexico, and he's going to be walking from Niagara Falls into Canada. That's in July. And, for those that want to walk with him, he's invited you. You don't have to do the entire walk, but you can do a part of a walk. He
Right.
calls them community walks. Okay. But he's going to be here. Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, he's going to be speaking on his walks,
So awesome.
and he calls it Walk to Freedom. His name is Ken Johnston. Okay. Feel free to Google him. But there's been several news media that's been tracking him.
Wow.
Very, very bright and phenomenal guy, Ken Johnston. But he's even taught me a lot in our walks,
Right.
and the things that we're doing. But anyway, back to room number 2.
Don't say anyway. Everything you say, I'm just like, I want to hear it all.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
Yeah. But the 1826 to 1860.
Right.
Right?
26
Okay.
to 60.
All right. Let's go to room 3. In room number 3, I call that my room of resistance. Okay. In that room, I talk about places that had helped to hide or harbor the freedom seekers in New Jersey, as well as give homage to states that did the same. Okay. And even though Harriet stopped running, she never stopped serving. Okay. So she established a home for seniors. Okay. That home, as well as her original home and her place where she's laid to rest, is in Auburn, New York. And we show pictures of all of that. Okay. I also talk about William Still in that room, because people need to understand the role that William Still played as an abolitionist.
Right.
He had a host of supporters. I go through that. That whole room is full of abolitionist pictures, people that people never heard about. Some they have, some they haven't. Thomas Garrett, his grandson was with us last year during our Juneteenth event. But they're coming. Not only his grandson, but we also had Harriet Tubman's cousin. She has been in the museum as well as come out to our Juneteenth event. We have the Still family.
Yes.
Both from James Still as well as William Still. They come to our events. The Lenape Nation, they come to our events because those that are best equipped to tell the story are the family members.
Absolutely.
Why do I have to tell them when they're right there?
Right.
And you can meet them and you'll hear the authentic story.
Oh, that must be amazing.
Yeah, it's not normal what we do, because we try to bring history to life in that. Okay. We talk about the different codes that are out there, the braiding of the hair, which served as mats with pieces of rice in the hair. we talk about the roles that the churches have played,
Right.
with the crosses in the ground, not to determine whether it's daylight or nighttime, but to let the air get down into the areas where the slaves were hidden.
Oh my
The crosses
goodness.
in the ceilings, you had to know which cross to release or the hatch.
Right.
Okay, so they can come out. Many times it was right there on the podium and you would never know it.
Wow.
The different codes, the singing and things like that. That's why Harriet was so strong at what she did, because she knew all of those codes, all the relationships. People don't know about, I talked about the waterways, but people don't know
Yes.
the hidden compartments in the trains right there. People don't know about that. They're not
No.
taught about that. And then I go to room 4. I'm still in room 4. Okay. In room 4, that's my aha room. That's my aha room.
Okay.
Exactly.
Aha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's when I go quiet and I ask all of my guests, I said, tell me what you know about Juneteenth.
Right.
What do you know about Juneteenth?
I know not enough. I'm going to admit that I don't know enough, but I do know that we were freed, that we were actually freed on Juneteenth, on June. That's why we celebrate it.
Okay.
Don't ask me anything else.
Okay. What you hear in the news, June 19, 1865, slavery was abolished in the United States.
Yes, we were freed.
Okay. June 19, 1865, slavery was abolished in the United States. That's what you hear.
Right.
Okay. All right. 1861, Civil War began. 1862, Abraham Lincoln said, listen, Confederate States, if you refuse to release the slaves, we're going to activate the Emancipation Proclamation. At that time, the Union Army was not winning the war. But with the activation of the Emancipation Proclamation, that allowed the colored soldiers to work along with the Union Army to fight the battle. All right. Yes, it took 2 years to get down to Texas. In 1863, that's when there was about 1,000 slaves in Texas, but in 2 years later, over 250,000. Why did it take so long? Because the Union Army was here and not here. All right. And then you had the southernmost states that were the most resistant in the Emancipation Proclamation. So they would run south. You had that movement. Now, June 19, 1865, that's when General Order Number 3 was signed. Okay. What people don't realize is that with the signing of the the General Order Number 3, because the Emancipation Proclamation was signed January 1st, 1863, 2 years later, the signing of General Order Number 3.
Right.
Okay. What people don't realize is when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, that was only good for the Confederate States. That's it. 13th Amendment, that's when you had another 100,000 slaves free. Okay.
Right.
What do you think the last northernmost state was that abolished slavery?
The last, if I had to guess, Texas.
Texas was part of the Emancipation Proclamation. The last northernmost state,
I don't know.
New Jersey. Not until January 1866. Okay. So remember the years that I told you to remember with Timbuktu?
Yes.
When was Timbuktu established? 1826. Right? When was the battle? 1860. Emancipation Proclamation, 65. New Jersey, 66. So how could that happen?
That's so
How could you have a
disappointing.
free community when slavery was still legal in New Jersey? You had remember I was telling you about the collaborations of the abolitionists, the Quakers, and the like. See, the Quakers didn't believe in slavery at the time, so they issued the Freedom Papers.
Right.
So you had a free community down the street when slavery was still legal in New Jersey. My question to you is, what was the last state to abolish slavery?
I do not know.
Mississippi, 2012, ratified February 7, 2013. Exactly. That's the aha expression that I get from everybody in the room.
I'm sorry. Wait, can you? I probably missed it. 2000 what?
13. Yeah. Basically, when you have an amendment that covers all states, but you have to sign it. It was never signed in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's things like that. That's what we,
Oh my God.
raise awareness in the museum. So you could,
how's that possible?
you can have dialogue.
Right.
You can have dialogue and you can talk about things. See, we not only talk about Black history, but we talk about history across the board. We talk about the internment camps. We talk about, Holocaust. We talk about the Italians, what happened with the Italians, the discussion with the Greeks, the Grecian countries. We talk about all those types of things. You see, it's important for those people to understand your legacy.
Yeah.
And I always tell, especially the young people that come through the museum, I tell them to go and sit down and have a conversation with your oldest ancestor and not just write it down, but interview them and keep it audio taped so their voices can be passed down throughout the generations.
Yeah.
It's so important. It's nothing like hearing those stories in your grandparents' voice and putting it somewhere so they could pass it down to their children.
Right.
It's very important.
It is.
It's very important. And I attribute a lot of that to, growing up in the military and appreciating the differences. I learned more about who I am, whose I am, why, what happened, but it's very important. Yeah. And that's only room 4.
How many rooms are there?
8.
So
wait a minute. 1. Wait, I'm going through. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8.
Mm-hmm.
At what point during the tour, and we're going to go past the aha, because I'm still stuck on that. Do you have to stop and people need a breather? Like,
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. I don't stop because normally when we're going through the sessions, they don't even realize that we're going through, that we've been talking that long, because you have more of a pictorial.
Okay.
You have more dialogue. You have more interactivity that's going on. And before they realize it, what?
So there are a lot of tears?
Hands down, yes. That happens because that's another reason I'm glad you mentioned that. For kids that are 13 and under, I don't encourage them to come in because I've seen a lot of the adults react. And with youth, especially under 13, I'm concerned with mental illness. Okay. Yeah, they're not prepared, or you have kids that come in and they might see something that they can't explain, or if they have a friend that does not look like them and they look at them differently now. It's not fair to put a child in that position. Wow. Or to put a child in a position where they're going to challenge a teacher in school. That's not fair. Right. Okay. That's not fair. Yeah. When individuals come through with children, we tell them, we let them see, they have to decide whether they want to bring the child in. Right. And we sign the disclaimer. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've seen too many adults react. When you start talking about things like the lynching history or the strange fruit, from Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit. When you show pictures of beatings or, the whips
Yeah.
or things like that. And you see different phrases in the museum. You need to be real that it happened. You can't push it to the side that could never existed.
Yeah.
You can't do that. So the best way to do is have dialogue. So you're brought to a bridge of understanding and appreciation.
Yeah.
And when I do my presentations, I talk about, it's entitled Why We Walk. Why We Walk.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. And it starts with a mother and a child. Why we walk. Mama, why I have to go? Child, keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. That's why I thought about you when you were saying that. I was like, yeah, the Why We Walk presentation, and I'm truncating it to the museum.
Yeah.
The Why We Walk presentation affects people in many ways because it talks about the importance of walking through it all. You got to walk. Whatever your destiny is, you got to find reasons why you've got to keep walking. Whether it's the grand movement to the north, whether it's a women's political movement, whether it's the sanitation workers, Martin Luther King's walk, or whatever. Everybody had a reason. The bus boycott, you got to keep walking. Whether it's Pettus Bridge, you got to keep walking. Whether you're getting beat or not, you got to keep walking. So the lessons in life historically are there. We just have to learn, how did they make it through? If they can get through, we can get it through.
Certainly.
Exactly. If we're going to get beat, stripped, whipped, slain, torn, yeah, we can do it.
Yeah.
We can do it. Yeah. And we're in room 4.
Jeez.
Yeah. Now you see how you're reacting. That's why I don't put children in that that frame of mind.
And I haven't even seen it yet.
Yeah, the lynching history is very emotional.
Yeah, it's tough to watch on TV. But there are some things that are triggering for us, and so we'd rather not see it, know it, or watch it. But I think it's important for us to, because they actually went through it, not us.
But we are.
The lynching, the torture.
Yeah. In a different. Okay. Yeah. The thing, yesterday's lynching is today's what? It's
agreed.
It's yeah.
Agreed.
You have to learn. That's why it's important to sit down and have conversations and to talk things out, to learn, to appreciate.
Yeah.
Sitting down and when we talked about the seeds being placed in your spirit, it teaches you how to get through something. The strength of understanding that you're not alone. Yeah. The strength and understanding that it's going to be okay. When you're running a race, it's just when you're about to cross over that you want to scream the most. But you got to keep walking. Yeah. You got to keep walking. You got to keep walking. You do that when you have a true appreciation of your why. Okay. When people come to the museum and the first thing out of their mouths is, well, what's in your budget? You're not the one for me. Because I know you do things because it's for the money and not because of your why.
Right.
Your why is like when I saw your daughter, I saw it in her eyes. I'm like, I know her why before she even says it. Wow. That's why I'm ready. I'm here when she's ready for it. And you get to see that through.
Sorry, because people don't really understand what another person's going through. And when you said that about her, especially about Audrey, because since she's been born, she's been going through stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she carries herself in a way that makes me look at her like, well, how did I end up being your mama?
Because he ordained you to be that what he wanted you to be, to carry her through when nobody else understood. That's why. Just like my sister. My sister with special needs. Audrey was one of the strongest people that I ever met. It's because of Audrey.
Her sister's name is Audrey.
And because of my sister, the role that she played in representing the state with Special Olympics, with her special needs, the one thing that keeps me going, my name is Audrey Richardson. She's no longer with me, but she stays with me. It's Audrey's spirit in life that enabled me to carry this. She's always been, had alopecia. Mine was most recent, but her spirit in me helped me accept what I have, or what should I say, what I don't have, but it's her spirit in me. Okay. The things that Audrey did is something that was the strongest that I'll take to my grave. Okay. But it was my sister's spirit. That's what I saw on your daughter. And it was ironic that her name was Audrey.
It's amazing.
It's Audrey.
And she keeps me, I feel like I have to be strong.
Yeah.
For her, because, the Bible says, when I'm weak, then I make strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I look at her, it's like, how do you keep going? And I know how she does it in the most painful state.
Mm-hmm.
Because lupus is a beast.
Mm-hmm.
She gets up
mm-hmm.
and keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people who have so much less to do with,
mm-hmm.
and you have to pull them along.
There go, but by the grace of God. Oh my gosh! Exactly. The thing is that when you have a true appreciation of knowing who carries you and who's with you, all you have to do is lean, and they're there.
Oh, okay. So
in Psalms 91:4, it talks about the wings. Okay. And Galatians 6:9, it talks about in due season one will reap if ye shall faint not. Within whatever the season is, Ecclesiastes 3:10. So she is doing what she has to do to sustain.
That's right.
Okay. And whatever her plan is in Habakkuk 2:2, she's going to be fine because she's going to write it, keeping it simple. So whenever she goes through the eras of pain, okay, it's something that God has already laid out for her. And she's walking in that step.
Oh my goodness.
That's the important thing. Okay. Yeah. And I think her strength, because I don't know what affiliation you are or church, but it's amazing how he steps up when we can't step up.
Goodness.
You understand? And he will provide that strength when nobody else can. Or when she has her silent tears, he's there to wipe her tears away. He understands what she's going through, but she has been the one chosen to go through what she's going through. And it might not be about her, it might be about you. Testing your sense of strength. Okay. I know we're all the way out of the museum, but everything is a lesson. Everything is a lesson. Everything is a lesson. And everyone hurts in their own way. Okay.
I hurt for her. But we had an episode a couple weeks ago about lupus awareness, and he chose her, not me. But I feel her pain.
Mm-hmm. That's mom. That's your baby.
Yeah.
Trust. I have situations too. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. Some relationships you wish that they were better, but again, you go through it for a reason. Go through it. Yeah. Yeah, she's going to be strong. She's going to surprise you. She's probably surprising you now, but
every day.
Exactly. And you're going to be fine. I mean, think about, she's going to be fine. She's going to be fine.
She has proven that over and over. Sending her to college was one of the hardest things her and my husband, hands down, ever had to do, because we had to pull her out of school in 7th grade, and she was homeschooled. So she had never been away, and she was always sick. So we were all, you have a sick child, you treat them like an egg. You don't want it to crack. And I had people that are like, you have to let her go, or she's going to run. And I was like, but I don't know how.
You're doing it now. You got to let go.
I did. And when she went, I was just like, oh my.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with Juneteenth or Timbuktu, but it is my history. It's my story, right?
But believe it or
this
not,
girl,
believe it or not, it does. And I'll tell you how.
Please tell me how, because I don't know how we got here.
I'll tell you how. I'll tell you how. When I do presentations in schools.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. When I do presentations in schools, you always hear about how young people, you can't get through to them, and all those kind of things. But when I do presentations in schools, I tell teachers, get away. They look at me like I'm crazy. Get away. Right. I have someone in another room instructing them on why I told them what I did in front of the kids. Because now I want the kids' attention, period. They're not to talk. They don't have anything. They cannot, no cell phones, no pads, no talking to one another. Got to be quiet. When they're instructed to go in the room, there's an assignment on the wall. The assignment is you got 1 minute to let your family know you've got to run away from freedom. Yeah. By the time I get to the podium, pens down. You see, there's lessons going on in life. They have to make a decision, and they got to write less than 1 minute, pens down. Teachers, they only have one assignment. Their assignment is to say dead, period. If any child talks, dead. If anybody says anything, dead. You see, when I'm doing the presentations, I always have a colleague with me, and that person comes in and goes to sleep. I do my presentation. Once the presentation is done, I tap on that person. She wakes up, speaks, and then goes back to sleep. Presentation's done. Why is all that stuff going on at one time? Okay. Number one, I challenge the students. And I'm thinking about your daughter.
Yeah.
Okay. I challenge the students because they have 1 minute to write creative energies. Creative energies. What do I feel? I can't get this from a student that's next to me. This is an intimate letter from me to my mom, my dad, my whomever. I got to go. Right? Teachers, they don't understand why I'm yelling dead. What is dead? Okay? All right. Lesson being, the young woman, I tell the students, number one, you never know who is talking to you, why it's important to listen, okay? What that challenge meant to you, but their assignment, now I want you to read it to the room. Read it. The lessons, the letters that they wrote are placed on a quilt, on a square piece of fabric, and a quilt is made. So they'll be able to share with their kids years later what they wrote on this quilt. Okay? With the teachers, what was their lesson? You never took the time to ask the woman that was sitting at the table whether she's okay or not. You never know who's around and who's speaking. The students, the same. Did you even ask her what her name was? See, the person that was sitting in the room was Harriet Tubman's cousin. You never know who is telling a story. You never know. You never know who's sitting next to you to make sure, are you okay? You never know. So why were you yelling dead to my students? If you're late for a lesson, what are you? If you're 15 minutes late for an interview, what are you? If I was running with Harriet Tubman and I came late, what was I? If I didn't know where my next assignment was, who am I listening to? What are you? Not only is it you, but everyone around you. See, there's a lesson of accountability. There's a lesson of the why. There's a lesson of the drive. There's a lesson of your surrounding. All of those things tie into, if you don't, you're dead. I'm tired of hearing about the CP times and all that kind of stuff. No, if you didn't take the time to listen to what your teacher's been trying to teach you for the last umpteen years, be it homeschool, being in school, your friends, being very mindful of who you're around. You see, you want to make sure that you're around eagles and not the scallions.
Yeah.
Okay? Eagles fly alone. So whatever you did to prepare your daughter, oh, she's going to be an eagle and she's going to soar.
Yeah, she is.
Okay? And lean on that. She doesn't have to be around everybody all these years, you know?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying there's nothing wrong
Right.
with that, but you got to be mindful of your surroundings and who's planting seeds in your ear, the seeds.
Right.
Okay. The important thing for you to do is continue to water her dreams. Okay. Not focus on her limitations. No, limitations are only based on what you see yourself. You're your biggest critic. Okay. But what she sees is the stars.
Wow.
All right. That's what's allowing her to go out and be her. She knows she's unique. She knows the pain that she carries. She knows the weight that she carries. That's why she's going to be fine, because she sees the strength that you and your husband believe in her to allow her to make that step. She'll call you when she needs you. She will.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're going to be fine.
That's incredible.
Okay. So the story of walking is very important. Let her spread her wings. She's covered. She's covered. Audrey Richardson. Okay, we're in room 4. We're still in room 4. But, you know.
Okay, I'm okay.
Yeah. But we go, you know, we transition because we've gone from, I didn't even get into the story of the Stills. You know, William Still, James Still, you know, the Peter Still stories. I didn't even get into all of that. And then we go upstairs and we're into the civil rights movement around there. We go into the Booker T. Washingtons, the W.E.B. Du Bois. We go into the Marcus Garveys. We go into the lynchings of America. We go into the Roosevelts, the cabinets. We go through all of those things. We even talk about the Tuskegee experiment. We talk about that. We talk about the, I mean, it's like, what don't we talk about?
Right.
You know, we talk about those names that you normally don't hear.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in one of the last rooms, say one of the last rooms, you know, we talk about the Emmett Till stories. We talk about that. We talk about the Rosa Parks and how she was the first to sit down in the bus.
Yeah.
Was she the first?
Sometimes I think she was.
She was the second. Okay, because you're talking about Claudette Coleman.
There was more. Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, we bring out those facts that people don't know about, don't think about. We talk about those that have embarked in the Burlington counties of the world, you know, When you talk about Martin Luther King, do you talk about Clarence Jones?
Hmm.
He helped to write the I Have a Dream speech right here from Willingboro. Not
Wow.
Willingboro, but right
Right.
from Palmyra High School.
Wow.
You know, we talk about the first of the first of the first. We talk about the Bordentown School. People don't know about the Bordentown School, and it kills me. First private school for kids of color, 6th grade to 12th grade, right here in Bordentown.
Wow.
You know, in the Rice, Reverend Rice, which is the founder of the school, you know, his great granddaughter was Susan Rice from the Obama administration. People don't know things like that, you know.
Wow.
But there's so much that's entrenched in the museum.
And so much history right here.
Down the street. So, you know, I know, because I'm truncating now, I know that you wanted to talk about Timbuktu, and you wanted to talk about Juneteenth, and you wanted to talk about the museum collectively. See, there's a reason why we have our Juneteenth celebration at that site.
Yes.
Okay, because the first property is the Rancocas, it's the state park down the street, which used to be a former Powhatan Indian reservation. Okay, in that reservation, or in the park,
yes,
so to speak, we're having we're having 3 tours, 11, 1, and 3. What's happening in that 3.5-mile walk is that you're going to be, or the guests are going to be going through an experience for what a person that a freedom seeker is going through. They will be experiencing that through that 3.5-mile trek. At the end of the trek, they're met by Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman then transitions them into Timbuktu. In Timbuktu, you will experience a Taste of Freedom series, foods coming from around the world. You will also experience the the still production, If These Stones Could Talk. We have reenactors of Peter Steele, reenactors of James Steele. And while the Taste of Freedom series is going on, we have a couple that's singing songs in code. Linda Davis, yeah, she's going to be. Linda is off the chain. Linda and her husband David. They just finished singing in Japan.
Nice.
But they'll be back to perform this weekend.
This Saturday.
That's just Saturday. And I didn't even tell you who our speakers are going to be.
No, you didn't.
Deion Sims from Opal Lee, Walk from Texas.
Yes.
Okay. We have Guy Weston, the historian.
Right.
He's going to be speaking. We have Terrence Bailey. He's the nephew of Frederick Douglass, 5 times removed. We're also having the family members from William Steele and James Steele. They're going to be there.
That's so beautiful.
We're also honoring the colored soldiers and the Buffalo Soldiers. They're going to be honored. And how we end the program is going to be with a gospel concert. Why gospel concert? We do a gospel concert because everything from the day that we were stripped from our homes in Africa, even to the point where they're running.
Yes.
It was all based on faith.
God did it.
So we're doing a gospel concert.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's
Can you tell me who's
the
concert? Who's your artist? Like who's singing?
I sure can. I thought you were going to ask me that. Destiny Diggs is going to be our guest host. Okay. She is a 2-time Stellar Award winner, radio broadcaster. She's going to be our host. We have Elaine Saunders Mayfield. She is an independent gospel artist.
Let's go.
Okay. We also have Minister Michael Cruz and the Fellowship Experience.
Nice.
They're going to be performing. We also have Sinclair Johnson. He's an independent gospel artist. And lastly, we have the Transform Nation music. That is Tyrus Bush, and they're coming from Bethany Baptist Church.
You heard it here. And we hope to see you there. In closing,
Yes.
This Saturday is going to be amazing.
Yes.
And I'm going to be there. By the grace of God, me and my family are going to be there. And I want to see you there as well. In closing, give us why we need to be there on Saturday. Why should we not miss it this Saturday?
You need to enrich your spirit of who you are, whose you are, and why you are there to hear that story, because it's your responsibility to pass it on. That's why. Oh, wow. When you come, for those that visit Timbuktu for the first time, it even happened this afternoon because I did a tour before I came here. There were about 40 people there. And with the museum, I took them to Timbuktu. They understood more about Timbuktu before they went out there, so they can have their own appreciation of what happened on that property.
Right.
But I purposefully told them to go on the hill and just stand on the hill because the community is there. And one young lady came to me afterwards, and she just started crying. And she said, I felt it. I said, I know. That's why I gave them the opportunity to feel what happened on this land. Because this land is an Underground Railroad stop. This land has the spirit of many. This land is not a land where, you just have a cookout and you sing and you party and all this kind of stuff. When you understand what happened on this land and why it happened on this land, only you can explain why you're standing on that land. Yeah. It's not for me, it's for you.
That's right. And that happened to me when I went to Timbuktu. I couldn't explain, but I could not control myself. I was crying, and I was like, I had to go to my car and gather myself because I was so grateful. I was so grateful just to be able to stand there. I went up on the hill and I stood there and was like, oh my God.
There's a peace on that hill that surpasses understanding. And
it's the truth.
That's exactly why we call it the experience of a lifetime, a Juneteenth celebration.
And how much is it?
It's free.
It's free.
Everybody asks me, well, Deb, why don't you charge for these programs? Why don't you do, what my response is?
What's that?
We've already paid the price.
Didn't we?
We've already paid the price. I cannot
and still
stop someone from learning something that they're supposed to hear. Right. They're supposed to learn. We do take donations. I mean, we do take donations, but if you're led to donate, let your heart be the driver.
I love that.
And not the wallet.
You are amazing. Yeah. And you are beautiful. You really are. You're beautiful. Your smile, your spirit is just so beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so grateful. I didn't mean to bawl on you the way that I did.
That's okay.
But I just felt like I could. And I needed to hear the message. I needed to hear it. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your yes. I appreciate your time. And I just thank you so much for being here on the CharlieB Podcast.
Yeah.
Listen, everybody, you have met the beautiful and the talented Miss Deborah Price. I encourage us all to be out there. This episode is going to air probably Friday so that you all can prepare to be there on Saturday. What time does this start?
It's from 11 to 6. And please keep us in prayer with the weather forecast.
We're going to pray that God holds the rain. Please, Lord, don't let it rain. We're going to ask. He'll do it.
Yeah.
He's going to do it.
Yeah.
All right. That's all we have for you tonight. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Join me next time right here on the CharlieB Podcast. CharlieB out. Oh, my God.
Did I say?
You did wonderful. That was absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
You need to write a book. You need to write